going down, everybody? It's your boy. That guy, my high tune back in for another reaction. This time we got one of them scary cherry bangers. You dig? This one's called "This Is Why You Should Never Be Alone in the Swamp." Yeah, that sounds awful. So yeah, anyways, before we jump into that, let's give a big shout out to all the members of the channel real quick. Kara, Hollaboy, Nene, Netcoast, Taylor, Shauna, Driver Thoughts, Neek, Nick, Dave, Happy Chick, Wild Turkey, Jamal, Ryan, Sam, Keith, Kenneth, Funny Farm, Hologirl, Diesel, Creatively Insane, Aaron, Mama Dukes, Amy, Liz, Nugget, My Hood Life, and Gary. I almost had it super smooth. I stuttered a little bit at the end. I ain't gonna lie, but it was still clean. If you want to join these amazing individuals with becoming a member and take advantage of a bunch of perks and whatnot, and join us for the Sunday members only lives, think about hitting that join button down below. You got 3 different options to choose from. And yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video. Oh, and if you don't want to join, it's okay. Just subscribe. It's free 99, baby. It's free 99, and it helps your boy out. We're trying to hit 100K one day. So please hit that subscribe button down below. Please, baby. You dig what I'm saying? Okay. I'm sorry. I be getting carried away sometimes. My bad. Okay, my bad. Let's go.
Swamps are creepy. They make a great setting for horror stories. But horrifyingly, creepy, fact can be weirder than fiction. Yeah, these are the 20 terrifying things found in swamps. Number 20. Dolls on bamboo shafts.
What?
There are certain facts in life that are undeniable.
Oh, yeah, just turn
and one
around
of them
and
is
go
that
away.
if a bunch of horror movies make a claim that a basic object can be evil or haunting, it very likely is. And dolls are something that have been the subject of many horror films over the years, for better and for worse, but mainly for the worse. So you may be asking, but that's only in horror movies, right? Well, are you sure about that? Because if you look up creepy doll stories, you'll inevitably find plenty of them, which includes this one from Alabama in 2014, where apparently 21 of them were taken and put on bamboo stakes and then placed on a key road near a swamp that would ensure that people would see them. And oh boy, did they see them, and notice that some of these dolls didn't even have their heads anymore. Now, by now, most people would be crying out bloody murder. However, not the sheriff. He noticed the dolls actually several weeks beforehand while driving through the swamp, working on the report of a stolen vehicle. He thought that they were probably just a Halloween prank and didn't give them much afterthought. Yeah, that's a man who would die in a horror movie, though he was the first to admit that the dolls were quite a sight to see when he came upon them, saying that they did look kind of creepy, and he laughed as he talked about how they were inventoried back at the courthouse. You could see them from the road, and they figured it was best just to round them up. Yeah, probably a good idea there, Sheriff. The swamp itself that they were next to does have a reputation for unique things going on, so perhaps somebody was just trying to play into that, but that's a whole lot of work for one simple prank.
Right, for sure.
Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping.
Going the other direction at a very high rate of speed.
Now it's time for the sweet topic. Have you ever heard of an alligator gar? If not, let me tell you the chance that you may encounter one in a swamp. Because this is why you should never be alone in the swamp. Because they're gnarly beasts. And this footage shows the terrifying moment a guy stumbled upon one in a swamp. These things are dangerous, and as you can see, giant. If you want to avoid these things, and of course you do, stay away from the swamps. As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below using the hashtag #SweetTopic. Number 19, the swamp ghost. Thankfully, this isn't a story about an actual ghost in a swamp, but rather about a plane that had the name of Swamp Ghost. More specifically, this was about a story that would lead to how the plane got its name. It was a B-17E Flying Fortress. Captain Frederick Fred C. Eaton Jr. was its pilot during the Second World War, and along with his crew, they were out in the skies above New Britain, trying to do nothing more than to complete their mission of taking out an enemy freighter. But as bad luck would have it, their first pass was a failure, failure because of a mechanical issue with the doors. Though they were able to get another pass in and drop their explosive payload, it would come at the cost of being found by the enemy of Japanese aircraft, ones that weren't exactly afraid at all to try to shoot the bomber down. They would succeed, and they didn't succeed. They heavily damaged the plane, and Eaton did all that he could to try and land it in a safe spot as he flew back to New Guinea. However, the pickings were slim, and he had to end up in a swamp. Him and the remaining crew would travel for 6 weeks before getting back to safety, and then got a new plane and continued to fly during the rest of the war. But as for his original plane, well, it remained in the swamp for many years. Eventually, the Swamp Ghost nickname was caught on when a plane in 1972 spotted it, still lying there. It's terrifying to think of what the crew had to go through, and they still kept on fighting through the war. The plane didn't get the best send-off, but it was a memorable life, no doubt. Number 18, Anacondas. Now, you may recall certain films starring this breed of snake, and some of them do indeed take place in swamp-like areas, and that's not inaccurate in the slightest. Many of anacondas in the world today prefer to live near the water, as they can not only hunt in it, but they can also swim through it and even blend in with it a bit more in order to get closer to what it perceives as prey.
Snake,
no, that typically doesn't apply to
I'm not
humans
scared of snakes necessarily, but you see a snake like that, you might
Furthermore,
think
given
twice.
that plenty of anacondas live in swamps, and swamps are very much able to blend things into the environment as a whole, you might have a much harder time finding this snake. And I haven't even gotten to the worst parts of it yet. For example, the green anaconda species is the longest snake in the world today, at times being well over 30 feet long, which is basically 5 times the size of an average human. It is a rather large serpent, but the way that they kill is truly monstrous, as they don't bite you to death, they'll actually squeeze you to death. Yes, they straight up constrict you until you can't breathe, and then you die, and then they consume you whole. And just to be clear on something, while anacondas don't actively hunt humans, that doesn't mean that they won't be able to go and eat them if they're hungry. Snakes have consumed humans whole before. There's actually proof of it. So the moral of the story is be careful when you go to the swamp next time. Number 17, Bahia horned beast.
What?
Now we have a swamp ghost story of sorts, because now we're talking about an infamous photograph that took the picture of a creature that would be later known as the Bahia horned beast. Allegedly, the picture was taken by an American in Brazil when she was just 15 years old. She took the picture and then ran away, and so this is all that we have for proof of this creature. The reason that so many were taken aback by it is rather obvious, because the thing looks like something from a nightmare, not the least of which is because of its horns and its potentially skeletal face. As a result of this, ever since it was posted online, people have debated about what it is and what it isn't, and what they can discern from the photo. Some have even gone to the area where the Bahia horned beast is and was known to have thought to have been, hoping no doubt to get more information from those who were nearby and thus hear the local legends. Now, I have no doubt that many local legends would be able to spin a great tale for those who are curious, but the question that really needs to be answered is it a real thing? Well, that's not easy to prove, not the least of which is that the photograph in question doesn't show the obvious signs of it being fake. It's a very high-quality photo, ironically, but that doesn't mean it's an actual creature. There are ways to fake that, and it doesn't help that the person who posted it wasn't the girl who actually took the picture, but a cryptid expert instead. That's not suspicious at all.
Somebody real good at Photoshop.
Number 16, Amazonian giant centipedes. There are some things in the world that you not only don't want to meet, but you don't want to find crawling on you without your knowledge. The Amazonian giant centipedes are ones that you can definitely add to that list. You can usually find them in tropical and subtropical rainforests of western and northern South America, and they also inhabit areas of the Caribbean, which includes Jamaica, the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. Martin, Grenada, Trinidad, and Tobago, along with the Seychelles, Puerto Rico, and more. So yeah, they have quite the reach. And that's bad for those who never want to see things like this. For the record, I'm amongst those people that never want to see them in person. And if you're curious, the Amazonian giant centipede is typically about a foot long, if not a little shorter at times, but that makes it all more than enough to scare you, and they are in fact the largest member of their family. They have from 42 to 46 pale yellow legs, which no doubt look incredibly creepy up close as they're crawling all over you. Another reason to not like them is that they're known to be incredibly aggressive hunters, to the extent that they're willing to eat just about anything that they can catch. But don't worry, they don't try to kill humans, well, at least that we know of. Yet despite their scary size, they're known to be a vital part of the ecosystems that they inhabit, which includes helping to get rid of bugs in such numbers that farmers actually benefit from them, believe it or not. Showing that just because something's scary doesn't mean that it doesn't have a purpose. Number 15. Sure it
has a purpose, but it's
alligator snapping turtle. Now here is absolutely a creature that you should fear, and for several reasons, just to be clear. The alligator snapping turtle is not a cute and small turtle that you would love to keep as a pet in your home or even in a fish tank. No, the alligator snapping turtle is a massive beast that's known for having some of the most powerful jaws in the history of the animal kingdom. Just to give you some context about how big these turtles
I like
the official confirmed max weight for an alligator snapping turtle is that of about 250 pounds. But an unofficial report would put it at more like 400 pounds. So yes, they do get big, but worse than their bark is their bite by a long shot. And no, it's not a cute little snapping turtle that you shouldn't get bitten by, but don't have a fear of getting hurt by it overall. This is a bite that you should never have happen to you. This species can bite through the handle of a broom, and in rare cases have been reported in which human fingers have been cleanly bitten off by these things. You know what that means? That means that this turtle has the power to rend flesh and bone with one simple bite.
Yeah,
that's something that you don't want to mess with ever.
Yeah, bite your whole fucking
Just
arm
as scary
off
as that it's a smart hunter. It's developed its tongue to act like a lure for bait, and then when it gets close enough, it jumps down. So be mindful around these turtles, won't you? Number 14, Homo algus. You don't know what to make of this one, do you? The scientific name for this thing may be throwing you off because you don't know if it's a plant or an animal that I'm talking about, or what kind in particular. However, that's where the rub is. This is not a plant or a creature. It's actually a statue made by a French woman who places these things in Marcia's nature reserve of Seine in the Gulf of France. The figures are modeled with mud and seaweed and with the algae drying within the elements. The colors, textures, and skin of the creatures do change over time, along with the organic landscape in which they inhabit. The sculptures offer a chance for onlookers to not only visit the site, but also engage in dialogue about biodiversity and our relationship to these lands. So yes, it is a bit random. That's actually really cool. And when you look at these creatures, you can't help but wonder creepy as shit to see that shit at night, the woman to make such a thing. Especially if you didn't know Apparently, it was because she saw some mysterious creatures in the swamp one day, and then decided to pay that forward by making her Homo algus, putting them in swamps herself. She's using them to truly invite the swamp creatures out into the world to be seen and interact with the statues and possibly other things. Now, I won't say that I do fully get it, but you can't deny that if something I don't necessarily get it, but it's cool. I mean, like, cool to just see it. Like, it's getting people talking about
art and shit. You know what I'm saying? I like
Number 13, the Ferryman's End. Oh, did you think the last entry was the only statue story? Well, you'd be wrong, but this one has a different twist and feel to it, I promise you that. Because this time around, we're not going to France, we're actually going to Ireland, specifically to a little-known place called Wicklow Park. Within, there's a place known as Victory's Way, which is, believe it or not, an acres-long private garden that has things like the Ferryman's End. But what exactly is the Ferryman's End? Well, it's one of 44 different statues made by the original owner, and they're pretty dark and scary. So much so that if you just happen to walk upon them in the area and see them, you might honestly think there was a monster in the water, and that's not very cool. So, we know the last sculptor's story, but what about this one? Opened in 1989 by German-born Victor Langheld, Victor's Way is described on the website as a compilation space for lone adults between approximately the ages of 28 and 65. It would take him more than 25 years to complete the design of the garden. So it's a choice, for lack of a better term. And trust me when I say that there's a lot of debate about what was meant to be the intention of the contemplation that was said to be had in this park. Because quite frankly, unlike the last set of statues, these ones look appropriately freaky, and that raises all kinds of unique questions about them. Number 12, Amazonian whale. When it comes right down to it, anything that's beached from the waters can be terrifying in its own right, not the least of which is that decomposition is not something that many of you want to experience for yourselves. But when you find something like a humpback whale in the swamps of the Amazon, well, you're going to ask some questions,
right?
Not the least of which is how the heck did it even get there in the first place? When it would be found in 2019, the people who discovered it definitely were not sure at all. Not the least of which was that the beaching clearly happened soonish after they had found it, which was odd because the whale pod that it would have been with should have been close to Antarctica at that point and nowhere near the Amazon. The people who found it simply imagined that it may have been floating and the tide took it into the mangrove. But the question is, what was a humpback whale doing in the month of February on the northern coast of Brazil?
Odd.
It is very unusual indeed, for as noted, these types of whales love to travel in pods, and as a result, getting way apart from the pod is unusual. As a result, some think that this may have been a younger whale who got separated from its mother and wandered around until it ended up in the Amazon. Number 11, toxic sludge.
Swimming.
This one's a bit of a twist because I'm talking about something literally swamping an area. In this case, a popular beach in France. And the thing doing the swamping was a bunch of algae, which may actually be toxic in the numbers that it was in. Not to mention that they reeked of rotten eggs, which is not the kind of smell you want when you're going on vacation. Part of the reason for that smell is that the algae is literally rotting in place, and because it's literally all over the beach and sand, people couldn't just bypass it to get to the water. Plus, would you really risk some of that touching you? Well, I don't think so.
That's a lot of algae.
This naturally upset the natural balance of the area to the point where they had to close the beach and restrict access to the cabins that were there. Families that had been going to that beach and those cabins for decades were suddenly kept back because the toxic algae was truly all over the place. It's not really the kind of story that you'd be expecting, but nature always wins. Number 10,
there's a lot of
Bayou corn sinkhole. By and large, sinkholes are one of the most terrifying parts of our world, not the least of which is because they can truly form anywhere at any time if the conditions are met. And if they don't hit a plateau, they can grow to incredible sizes.
Look at it, just gone.
Case in point, in Louisiana, there's a bayou called Bayou Corn Sinkhole. A sinkhole that's infamous because it took over a year for the state to even realize what was happening with it, and by the time they did, it had grown to the size of 24 acres. You'll likely have seen the now famous YouTube video of the sinkhole, well and truly swallowing everything in its path as a person on the water watches. That was real, and the sinkhole is so large that you can actually find it on Google Maps.
Damn.
Number 9.
That's wild.
Nuclear bomb. Now, I'm not joking about this one, nor am I telling a story that kind of happened in a swamp. There's an actual nuclear bomb that just so happens to still be in the place that it was accidentally dropped, and that place would just so happen to be in North Carolina in swamp country. This occurred in the 1960s during the peak of the Cold War. A nuclear bomber was flying over North Carolina on a patrol route with 2 nuclear bombs in its belly, but then everything went wrong, and the plane suddenly broke apart, killing some of its crew and almost blowing up the bomb itself. The 2 bombs would be launched out into the world, and one of them landed safely on a tree, with the other one falling right into the swamp and breaking apart. Once it was discovered, well, most of it anyway, it was found that one of the bombs was literally just 1 step away from exploding, and it only didn't due to a malfunction. How's that for a sobering thought there, Tar Heels?
That would be crazy.
Number 8. Bog butter.
Holy.
Just to be clear, I am absolutely not hungry for any of this. The creamy white dairy product, which smells like a strong cheese and is believed to be about 2,000 years old, was unearthed by a man by the name of Jack Conway. Yes, it is real, and it is a huge thing of butter. Apparently, many would bury their butter in bogs in order to preserve it for later, a tactic that was used by many peoples in the ancient times. Now, I'm not going to even try to pretend to know how tasty it might have been after being bogged, but what I do know is that I want no part of it. Number 7, bones. If you were to find bones in a swamp, you probably would not be all that surprised. It's a swamp, and bad things happen there. But when a story was found about a swamp that was said to be so full of bones that you only needed to reach in to grab them, people then sought it out.
It's not human bones, is it?
Hence why a major discovery was made where they did indeed find a swamp that had a ton of bones inside. But not only bones, it was the bones of extinct animals, ones that help paint a very clear picture of what the ecosystem was like back in the past. This is the kind of treasure trove that continues to keep on giving to this day, because you can learn a lot from just bones, but when you get to paint a picture of the past, that's even better for some. Number 6. Old CROGHAN Man. So what is an old CROGHAN man? Well, he's said to have been an ancient Celt that was placed into a bog as a part of a ceremony, and it's named after a nearby hill. As a result of the study, it's believed that this old CROGHAN man was actually a king or even a prince, and that's honestly hard to determine for various reasons. Not the least of which was that in the time that this man was said to have died, Ireland was divided up between 150 different tribes, each with their own ruler. Due to the way that the bones aged, it's believed that he was 2,000 years old, making him a very key part of history in his own right. There's still not a lot that's known about this time in Celtic history, given all the warring factions and the ways that bodies like this could be buried, so finding one like this is important indeed. Number 5. Great Dismal Swamp. With a name like the Great Dismal Swamp, you honestly would probably not expect much of a good thing to come out of it. But that's the twist about history. Sometimes the most dismal of places are where hope can spring eternal. And no, I'm not just waxing poetic. I'm talking about how when researchers have really examined the Great Dismal Swamp, they found something very interesting. What would that be? Well, how about the traces of a hidden community? Yes, there were people who lived in this swamp, and the common theory is that they were slaves who were trying to flee from the south to the north on the Underground Railroad. This was believed to be one of the stops of the area due to how there were plenty of plantations around where the slaves were being held. If this really is the case, then this is an important swamp due to how it may have saved some people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, if you needed to get away, that would be a place to be able to do it. Shit.
Now, look, I don't want to insult anyone, but you really have to be pretty stupid in order to drive a tank into a swamp. In World War II, a Russian-built T-34 tank would be captured by the Germans, repainted, and then used as their own. It was either stuck in a battle or abandoned by the Germans during the retreat, and thus remained in the swamp. And this was a solid tank as well. The Soviets kept using and reusing these tanks, so the Germans honestly had something special on their hands, but it's just too bad they couldn't keep it out of the muck. Number 3.
That was like a move it or lose it shit situation. It was like,
there's a lot going on in just that name, and it's only going to get more grand from here, I can promise you that. First unearthed in southeast Queensland in the 1980s, a prehistoric crocodile measuring over 16 feet was certainly a sight to behold once it was dug up. This was a swamp king, as it was known, and identified by a team of researchers from the University of Queensland. Apparently, it was one of the top predators of Australia back in its time. Now, some of you might note that this isn't the biggest crocodile the modern world has ever seen. That would be true, but it did have features that made it very powerful and very tough to kill, so it's worthy of being labeled as a king. Number 2, the Wendover Cemetery. A cemetery in the swamp? Well, why not at this?
Like that one just threw me off, bro. We was on a cool little streak of just like, oh yeah, that's cool, yeah, whatever, yeah, and then you want to be like cemetery in a swamp, like what? How do those two things even go together?
Since its discovery in 1982, this small peat-bottomed pond, situated roughly between Cape Canaveral and Disney World in east central Florida, has offered up no fewer than 168 burials. Oh, but that's not the terrifying part. The terrifying part is that when all of these bodies were brought up, there was nothing left of them but the bones and their brains. Yes, really, when brought up, their bones and brains were perfectly preserved at times, and that's food for thought. Now, I know it honestly sounds really weird that people would put bodies in a swamp like this, but to certain people, it might have been considered a great mercy or even a perfect way to preserve them for time immemorial. Number 1. Sugar Idol. In 1894, gold prospectors digging up a peat bog near the Russian city of something I'm not going to attempt to pronounce would unearth something bizarre, a carved wooden idol over 15 feet long, which is a pretty big idol, I would say. What's more, the front and the back of the idol was apparently covered in faces and hands. For more than a century, the statue would be displayed as a curiosity in a museum, assumed to be at most a few thousand years old. But now, people actually believe that it's more like 11,000 years old, which makes it much more ancient. Some even think that the faces and hands, along with the head on top, are actually some kind of symbol for demons and the taboo. And that's why the ancient rule of horror movies still remains. If something looks evil when you dig it up, just put it back in the
ground. I was about to say, it probably is.
That's all from the realm of swamps and the terrible and horrifying things that have been found there. Does it make you swear off swamps for good?
I mean, swamps were never like a place that I was just like, yeah, I got to go to the swamp. Like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'll stay away, like I have been. You know what I mean? Yeah. Down in the comments below, let me know if you would go to the swamps and, if you have, and what do you do in the swamps? You know what I mean? What do you do? Go hunt alligators and shit? Snakes? I don't know. Swamps just doesn't sound fun to me. Sounds awful. Sounds like a bad time. Anyways, man, I'll catch you guys in the next one.